Hi everyone and welcome back to the Power Platform Show. Today we're going to talk with a new ISV. Well, an ISV that became an accidental ISV after really going down the SI track and then intended to build a product, but it's come about much quicker than anticipated. The company is called Unearth AI and I'm speaking with Kevin Francis, the CEO of that company. We also dip into the SI business, which is called Wild Mouse. What a cool name, right, for a company. And I love it. The tagline, "We scare elephants." Totally awesome. Anyhow, let's get on with the show. Full show notes, remember, can be found for this episode at nz365guy.com/182. Hey there, Kevin. Welcome to the Power Platform Show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you on here. You know, you've got an interesting ISV with an interesting value prop there. And that's what, after having a chat with you, I thought, it'd be great to get you on air and really unpack what you're building there at Unearth AI and really your journey in this whole ISV space. How's that sound?
No, that's great. No, thank you for this. That was a great surprise when we had that chat and you were interested enough to do this. So I'm very happy.
So tell me a bit about your origin story, as in, you're based in Melbourne, Australia. What can you tell me about it?
So everyone's origin story, right? So I'm 54 now, just to put it in context, right? Because that's really important. So I started straight out of year 12 because there wasn't an IT degree at the time. So I didn't do uni. I went straight to a programming job writing Fortran at CSIRO, which is a research organisation in Australia, and wrote satellite navigation software. And then when there wasn't satellite navigation software, so that was interesting, and sort of worked my way through a series of programming jobs and then into architecture, IT architecture, then enterprise architect consultant, ended up running a major part of one of the big consulting firms with 1,600 staff at one point. And that's the kind of thing that as an architect and as a programmer, one does not expect to necessarily be doing. And that was a very interesting scenario. And then eventually sort of running Microsoft business units within some significant partners. Did well at that. And then I thought, I can make a go of this myself. And a couple of us decided to start a company. And there we are.
Okay. And so that company, so just correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand this. So it was Wild Mouse to start with, and that's now becoming Unearth AI. Just if people do look you up, they'll know that it's the one organization as such.
Yes, correct. That's right. Yes.
Okay. And you've always been based in Melbourne?
No, I grew up in Tasmania.
Okay.
And nice little place. So these days I live in Kilmore, north of Melbourne. And I live in Kilmore because it's a country town and it feels like Tasmania. Yeah, and I've got 2 grown-up kids, or semi-grown-up kids, both at uni, and married, and got a little 5-acre lot out there with a couple of animals and things, a couple of paddock dogs, as we call them. And yeah, there you go. Life is good.
Yeah, as in any time you're on the land, I feel life is good. I was brought up, as a farmer's son, and there's many times I really do want to get back on the land and just, even though I've been in IT for so long, right, it's a good feeling being out, on the land with the stock and whatnot.
Oh, it's great, yes, although I'm not sure that our 5 acres quite counts as on the land.
Oh, it's enough, man. Yeah, I've only got 1.5 acres and, it's a lot different than the farm I grew up on, but, it still doesn't have the neighbor, breathing right down my neck. That's what I like.
That's the bit that we like the most, yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you decided to build an ISV, and with the various jobs you've had, you've obviously been around a lot of projects. I assume you had the decision to go more, just take on project work from client after client, with your background experience. What initiated the thinking for you? You know what? I want to actually become a product business rather than a service business.
When we started Wild Mouse as our company, we wanted to start an SI, actually, a systems integrator. And we did start a systems integrator. And our aim was to kind of bring back what we thought was the good old days of systems integrators, there was a period in the 90s, maybe even early 2000s, when software development was about engineering and it was about innovation and it was about serious project management. And so we wanted to create an SI that did that. And over time, kind of what happened, of course, was that we started getting a series of engagements, consulting engagements, and particularly because we were focused on innovation and we had a real emphasis on leading edge. So in other words, the stuff that didn't easily get offshored. So we were focused on some leading edge stuff. And so, of course, we started picking up innovative engagements. And in particular, some AI stuff that we were doing very early, well, not early days of AI, clearly, because AI dates right back to the 60s, I know that, but early days of the common adoption of AI, say 4 years ago,
Yep.
we picked up a series of consulting gigs around cognitive services and, in those parts of the Microsoft platform that started to repeat each other. And so it didn't take very long before we went, now that we've done the same thing 4 times, this must be a product. And we so we morphed into a product company. Now, we always intended on building a product company. We just planned on doing it a lot later and getting more revenue behind us from an SI before we did it. So we're kind of in reverse of the way that we planned on running the company, but every startup pivots. And that was the pivot that we did. Yeah.
So those 4 projects, those cognitive service projects, first of all, what is cognitive service?
So cognitive services is a set of Microsoft technologies running on Azure that use machine learning in various guises within them to package up a set of machine learning capabilities. So they do things like, image recognition and voice recognition and, text analysis and things like that. And they package them up as pre-built out-of-the-box components that you can use. But having said that, they're not necessarily, just because they're pre-built components, that doesn't necessarily make them entirely easy to use. I'm sure the product team would say that they are, but there's a big difference between being easy to use, as in an experienced developer can sit down and get stuff out of them.
Correct.
And easy to use as in you can immediately solve a business problem with them. So we did some consulting work around, this is what, around solving some particular problems with these cognitive services tools. And that led to a pattern of requirements that people had around lots of people wanted to solve the same kinds of problems with these services, but it's still complex to solve it once individually per customer. Whereas if you solve it repeatedly for a lot of customers, it becomes easy, relatively speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. So with cognitive services, where does that machine learning come into it, right? Is machine learning where you build out your algorithms quite separately than consuming the actual service to, for example, do image recognition, audio, to text or something like that?
So the cognitive services as Azure tooling is pre-built to be able to handle image recognition out of the box. You just need to feed it enough training data, and there's a whole heap of cognitive services today. And you just need to be able to feed them enough training data, the image recognizer, enough images that you want it to be able to recognize, so enough dogs or cats or, the common scenarios, enough faces or whatever. And it can build within the knowledge to be able to do that because they've taken neural networks or whatever other type of machine learning algorithm and pre-set it up, pre-configured it, pre-programmed it to be able to do that. Now you can go the next level down, and we do go the next level down of actually doing your own ML development, but effectively cognitive services wraps up that ML development as a pre-packaged component that you can use to do stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. Just back on the wild mouse side of things, I love the name, right? Sounds amazing.
Cool, we're pretty happy with it.
How did you come up with it? What led to it?
So we wanted to create a different kind of IT consulting firm. And we kind of had some ambitions at the time too to be a little bit more business focused and less IT. So deliver IT outcomes and serious engineering outcomes, but do it from more of a business focus. So what we didn't want was so-and-so consulting services or such and such IT services, right? It was, there are too many of them. And we wanted something that sounded different and people would remember. And so we set about, I remember we went through this huge exercise of what we thought was something to do with an animal and maybe something to do with an adjective. So blue moose or, green chihuahua or something like that. And one of our founders' daughter, I believe, came up with wild mouse. And it was in the list of a whole pile of names, but it kept coming up the top. Certainly for me, it kept coming up the top as the one that had the most coolness about it, or the one that I liked the most. And then one day I just came up with a tagline in the middle of the night, which is "We scare elephants." And then the two go together and it's great. And it's one of the few taglines that I've seen customers actually stand and look at and talk about. because everybody else's is, our, I don't know, the most experienced, high
I love it.
quality, blah, blah, blah. But ours is just so silly that everybody loves it.
Yeah, I love your thinking. So, those first four big projects that you landed,
Yeah.
because these industries obviously were on the cutting edge of their space, that they wanted to, try out and use technologies that weren't mainstream just yet. What industries did they come from? What was the kind of sector they were sitting in?
So engineering, research, and mining were the areas that we were coming from. And really, all of those highly technical engineering type or research type organizations. So the real starting edge was around, can we recognize lots of different things across lots of different inputs and be able to put them together to be able to find things? As one of our customers said at the time, we just keep doing research over and over again because we don't know what research we've already done. As it turns out, that's a really common scenario across all sorts of organizations of all sorts of types. I think if you were to actually sit down and ask any organization if they actually really know what they've got, people will have SharePoint and they'll have things, so it'll be, oh yeah, we've got a formal records management system, we've got lots and lots of documents, so yeah, we know what we've got. That's different from, do you actually really know what's in there? Do you actually really understand what you've got? And can you actually use it? And another hot topic that's turned up is, so you've got a formal records management system. How do you know that you've actually got the things in there that you should actually have in there?
Interesting.
As it turns out, most people don't.
Yeah. So, how did the pivot come to, or is it a pivot to unearth AI?
Well, it's pivoting from a business terms, not really from a logical perspective. So we were doing these projects and we just went, well, this is a product. Let's start building it as a product. I mean, there's a discussion that we can, that I think we'll touch on about how that impacted the business, from, okay, we were planning on doing it later with more money, so that's been entertaining. But from the business perspective, we had always planned on being a product company. We just ended up being a product company sooner than we planned it on being, a lot sooner than we planned on being. And so that's led to a particular journey for us that's been both challenging but good.
Mm-mm. If I was to categorize, then would I be right in saying Wild Mouse was your system integrated business and Unearth is your product business, the ISV business?
That's absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, that totally makes sense to me now. Now, tell me a bit about then the journey. You obviously jumped into it quicker than and anticipated by what you're saying around the Unearth product. Actually, before we go there, why don't you tell us what the Unearth product is, and then we'll look at the journey.
Oh, sure. Okay. So Unearth is a pretty complex beast on the inside and a simple beast on the outside. So it has four components.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if everybody can just follow along with me, it will make sense at the end, right? So it has four components. Firstly, we have an ingestion engine. So our ingestion engine allows us to ingest any information from any source within an organization. That's a brave statement, but a true one. And by any information, what we mean is any Office documents, PDF files, scanned documents, so paper, so we can OCR things, video, audio, and importantly, data and databases. So we can ingest data out of CRM or Dynamics 365, along with data out of another line of business system, along with documents out of SharePoint and a pile of video files, and put them all together. We organize information within a knowledge base that we load everything into, and we have a set of analysis tools that run inside Unearth that pull out key information out of the content that's being ingested or the information that's being ingested. And we get that information into a knowledge store. We have a discovery platform that allows analysis and search of that information. And so that can take many forms, right? At its simplest form, Unearth is a enterprise search engine that can search any information within the organization and put technology information stores together in a business context. So in other words, you can have a HR department searching LinkedIn with a pile of documents from an old file share with some SharePoint documents in the HR system all at the same time, right? That's at its simplest form. But then our analysis platform is really designed to allow people to analyze the information that's being ingested and find patterns in that information and do complex searching within there. And for example, map results on a map, or on a timeline, pull up tabular information from databases alongside information from documents and emails, things like that. So finding patterns across those very disparate sources of information. And then from that, we have a robotic process automation platform where people can take the patterns of information that have been discovered in the discovery platform and feed them into our robotic process automation platform that can effectively use that patterns to train AIs that can look for patterns of information as they occur in the future, or use past patterns of information to predict something that is going to happen in the future.
So can you give us, without mentioning, clientele or anything like that, give us some scenarios and maybe some diverse ones that, like the HR was a great one. Is there any others that you're seeing either across mining research or engineering that are quite unique?
Yeah, sure. So big ones are regulatory. So regulation-based organisations so government departments that have to look after regulation are a great example. So in many cases, they're doing regulation based on being able to assess, say, for example, and I don't want to get too Big Brother here, so don't think Big Brother, but being able to assess, for example, satellite imagery, traffic cameras with CRM records and emails, for example, right, to find patterns of behavior or something going wrong that aren't right, right? So be it illegal dumping of chemicals or food poisoning outbreaks or whatever, right? There is a pattern of things that have occurred or that are occurring that matches a pattern of things that has occurred in the past across a variety of disparate information sources that indicates that something is going to happen, right? And that's the key point, right? There's a lot of AI that's going on. We're certainly not breaking the ground with that, but a lot of AI that's going on is going on with data and data only. So, we've got AI in our data warehouse sort of thing, but AI with data plus these other sources at the same time as an out-of-the-box product experience is new. Right? And then other scenarios, right? Research is a big one. And particularly there it gets to, so we've got decades worth of something, of notes or something, usually notes or some other form of information. We've got decades worth of notes. We want to combine that together with all of these photos of something. So there might be, microscopic photos or satellite photos or something like that. And we want to combine that together with data that's come out of research, research findings. And we want to be able to put all of that together to look for patterns of something. And in a lot of cases, these are patterns of something that might not have been able to have been acted on in the past with past technologies, but can be acted on now with current technologies. But if an organization has been around for long enough, or if the information is old enough, people today won't know that that same research was done 50 years ago.
Interesting.
Right, so it's those sorts of patterns, right? And that marries across a wide variety of different types of organizations.
So you said you executed with Unearth, sooner than you wanted to with Wild Mouse. What are the lessons you've learned in doing that, and what would you have done differently?
So I think money has been a good piece of fun for us as a startup. And I think the lessons that we've learned after the event, it would have been better to have had finance in place earlier than later. I think our accidental product development, although it's really good, but it was accidental from our company perspective, our accidental product development meant that we didn't quite have our finances as sorted out as we could have done. We're looking for investors at the moment and so on to take this thing to the next step. So any investors out there, let us know. So we're now doing effectively Series A funding without having done a seed, which is great. But from a company perspective, it's been a lot more stressful than it necessarily could have been had we had the benefit of hindsight and done it the other way. Our platform is very good at predicting things that happen. Unfortunately, we didn't use it to predict the things that were going to happen to our business. But then we didn't have it built either. So another really good point was to have an advisory board in place. I think it would have been really good to have had extra intelligence within the business that had more experience about running a business than a bunch of IT people do. And then I think it would have been really good if we just had have learnt what we've learnt over the time about the willingness of other people to help. I think were very, oh, we've got to keep everything secret and we've got to, and nobody's going to care. It's just us against the world. And I think it would have been really good if we had have spent more time asking more people for help, and if we had have spent more time, working with people that wanted to provide finance or things like that. Because as it turns out, people are a lot more help to a startup than you would think they would be.
Interesting. So, can you give me some examples? So, if I understand that right, you're saying that you didn't think people would be willing to help, but being that you are a startup and in that place, you've been pleasantly surprised at people's willingness to engage?
Yes, that's right.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
When we go talk to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those. I was talking to someone yesterday, another small business owner, completely different kind of business, but we had this conversation about, how's business? Oh, it's okay. We're getting there. I've got these challenges. There's these difficulties along the way. And the conversation was really, that's really refreshing, because nobody really says that things are hard. There are so many stories of the unicorns and the people that where the business was instantly successful and was started in a dorm room, and now they're a billionaire, right?
Exactly.
But there's very few of those actual stories where things really do work. There's many more stories of struggle. And all entrepreneurs, all successful businesses have been through that struggle. You just don't know unless you ask them, right? So if you sit down with a business owner, a successful business owner, and say, so, this is happening to us. This is where we're at. How was it for you? People will tend to open up, and they'll open up with advice and assistance. And so we've got people now that we sit down and help write our mission statement together, or work on marketing pitches together, or do other things like that we never would have thought to have sat down with earlier, because we didn't realize that there were people around that would like to help.
What part does Microsoft play in your journey?
So we've got a lot of track record with Microsoft, a lot of history with Microsoft. I started writing my first software after my Fortran mainframe based, actually ran on a digital VAX, blah, 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 way back in the day. But my first real experience with Microsoft stuff was programming Windows 3.0.
Wow.
And so I kind of date back a while, and I've met my first Microsoft employee somewhere in late 90s, and then I've done a lot of work with Microsoft along the way. So I was an MVP for 5 years for solutions architecture when there was such a thing, and led businesses to win a couple of Worldwide Partner of the Year awards, to 5 Australian Partner of the Year awards. So I had some good success working with Microsoft over the years. And so we're quite, we know a lot of people within the business, and we know their technology. But I think more importantly, there's a couple of reasons why Microsoft is particularly good for us and particularly good for ISVs, right? So firstly, they have a great technology stack on the cloud that is really well integrated together. So for us, there are other cloud platforms that have cognitive services or machine learning or Cognos or the other things that we need, but they don't have Office 365, and they don't have Dynamics, and they don't have the Power Platform, right? So, Microsoft has a really good stack for us to build on, and our product, being business focused, needs to, uses a lot of that stack. But then more importantly, they're a great partnering organization. And so it's taken us some time to get our partnership together, and, talk about how that works, to get our partnership together as our business, and, and to get it all established and so on. But the more it gets established and the more that we tick the boxes that we need to tick, the more proactive and then proactive Microsoft is becoming, and Microsoft people are becoming, in helping us to meet our needs and sell to their customers. Right? So when it works and when you work it well, a Microsoft partnership is really a partnership.
Yeah. So I can imagine, people listening to this would go, so what is it? What is that secret sauce to creating a great partnership with Microsoft? And I assume, like all things like this, it's got to do with people and relationships to a degree. But in your words, what is that around getting that kind of, engagement right with the Microsoft team?
So I guess, like I was saying, I've had plenty of experience at doing it over the years. And brand is important, right? Personal brand is important and so on. But getting there, I think, is the lesson. And one of the big lessons that I learned was that it didn't really matter how well known I was as a person. Having been an MVP, having won, worldwide partner awards and things like that for businesses that I worked for, going from that to a startup and having my own startup did not automatically mean that the startup was going to be known and that everything with the red carpet would be rolled out for us with Microsoft. And I don't know, perhaps it was unrealistic of us to think that it would be, or realistic that it wasn't, or maybe that's a deficiency with Microsoft. I'm not quite sure yet. I don't know. There's a whole other set of conversations, but that led me to go back and work out, okay, so what actually is it that makes it work? It's been a very interesting experience recreating a Microsoft partnership from a startup as opposed to running a Microsoft partnership from an already existing business. Entirely different experience. Anyway, so what it really comes down to is three things. One is, actually, no, more than three things. Firstly, you've got to have the basics in place. So you've got to remember, what is it that's important to Microsoft? So what's important to Microsoft is a couple of things, right? One is that they sell a lot of Microsoft services. And what is important to sell to Microsoft changes from time to time, but you can always pick it up by watching whatever, what is it called these days? Ignite, no.
Ignite, Ready.
Yeah, whatever it is, what the Worldwide Partner Conference became.
Envision, is it Envision?
Envision, yeah, it was always easy when it was called the Worldwide Partner Conference because you knew what it was.
WPC, right?
Yeah, anyway, yes, yeah. So they roll out in that what's important to them. And if you can build product or build an SI business or build whatever it is that's going to be focused around what is important to Microsoft, then you're going to be a lot of the way there, right? So, Azure is important to Microsoft and Unearth makes Azure work. So therefore, right? So firstly, you've got to have a business that triggers the points within Microsoft that matter. And then you've got to have a business that makes customers happy and solves something interesting for customers. So having a product that runs on Microsoft software is great, but it's not so great if it's boring. Having a product that runs on Microsoft software and does something that means customers want it or it makes a difference is far better, right? And we're lucky with Unearth that it does that. And then the third thing that you've got to have in place is to have a business that's easy to work with. So we go out of our way to make sure that our business is responsive to Microsoft, is easy to work with. We do all the things properly that we're supposed to do, and we're friendly and easy to work with and always amicable. And those things actually really count because at the end of the day, you're asking people to work with you. Then once you've got the foundations in place, the things that you have to have right are the system side of things. So that means Partner Center, have your products properly set up as Azure co-sell, set up have a product in the first place, but then set it up as Azure co-sell if you're an ISV, set up the OCP stuff properly so that you've got all the fundamentals of a partnership properly set up so that they can see what you're doing, so that account managers can properly engage with you and that people get properly compensated for, engaging with you and that sort of stuff's built in place. And then just, make sure that the story of we can make a difference to customers. We've got this product that really makes Azure work or whatever product stack that you've got, that we are aligned to the Microsoft business strategy and that we make customers happy is really well known, and a lot of internal selling within Microsoft. So we consider Microsoft to be more important than, maybe not more important than our most important customer. We would never say that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Microsoft is extremely important to us, and so we work that relationship a lot. The biggest mistake that I've seen partners make is somehow assuming that Microsoft owes them, or that all they need to do is set up a business and join NPN and everything will work. And of course, that's not the case. You've got to work the partnership to make it work.
Yeah. So for that, I would expect that educating individuals within Microsoft, in other words, so that they're confident to know what you do, because you're doing something quite unique in this space, and it wouldn't be enough to just say, oh, we're using AI. It's like you and everybody else, right? So there'd be an education process around what you're doing with your product. How do you consistently or repeatably, if you like, in a way, make sure your message is landing on the right ears that potentially open doors? Because in that example you gave around in PubSec there, with a government agency. Microsoft are often very embedded inside these organizations, and they're going to see where your solutions are going to hit the ball out of the park for one of those customers. I would say, I don't know, but do you have a sales force that, permanently in Canberra in Australia in this situation to do that? I'd think probably not. So are they really becoming your eyes and ears for the opportunities that you can potentially engage on?
Yes, well, there's challenges in that front. So one of the things that we've done with our product is tried very hard, probably something that I should explain way earlier in the conversation, was that Unearth is very business focused. I might have hinted at that, right? But Unearth is absolutely not an IT technical deployment sale. That has pluses and minuses to it. So the really big plus to it, and we've put a lot of effort into this, including hiring the right kind of people and spending a lot of time building the right product and getting the right messaging, is that we really have a product that is focused on business outcomes. It is not a product that is a technical tool set, although it can be a technical tool set, and there will certainly be some IT departments perhaps that might hear this and go, be listening to this podcast and go, look, I could use this thing to easily deploy AI into the organization. It's absolutely designed to do that, but it's also designed to be the thing that delivers business outcomes, right? Very much so. And so that's a double-edged sword, because it's very beneficial for Microsoft, because what Microsoft doesn't tend to do is have strong business relationships with its customers. It has very strong IT relationships, technical relationships with customers, not really strong business relationships with customers. So for us, it's great because it means that we can open the door to different kinds of conversations with Microsoft customers than it's necessarily easy for them to be able to open themselves. But then the negative can be that the kinds of people that we need to talk to inside customers to be able to sell it are not necessarily the kinds of people that Microsoft really often talks to. So we do find ourselves tending to lead the sale more often because we're starting at a different point, but Microsoft is very supportive of selling the product where they can be. We just sometimes have to work out exactly how we engage together.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. They've definitely come a long way from that business conversation. Definitely, I would agree. Years ago, very IT centric. I know when, I'd go and sell biz apps and they would be like, what? We only thought they did the operating system or the mail server, that was it. But I feel Microsoft have definitely come a long way since then and are much more, aware of how their tech can drive those business outcomes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But I think the thing that brings the story together for them is partner product, right? So it's great having a conversation with a sales manager, or someone else within an organization, but the conversation with a sales manager, maybe that's a bad example because it's CRM, but in another area of an organization, the value has to come from what they can do. And if you get outside the dynamic space, Office 365 and everything is very nice, but how does it actually provide a business outcome? It's partner product that has to fill that. And the more interesting and business focused the partner product is, the more beneficial it is across the partnership of Microsoft and the ISV. And so that's what we've been trying really hard to do, is to build a product that is technically very good and technically ticks all the boxes, but also has a real business outcome to it.
Yeah, yeah. If I gave you a couple of million tomorrow to spend on marketing,
we'd actually do something.
But in your mind, where would you invest that money? What would you put it, as your big wins? Just focusing on the marketing side of things, what do you think you would do?
So firstly, if people go to either wildmouse.com or unearth.ai, they're not just silly plugs for our website. You'll notice that our websites actually say very little about what we actually do. So they'll probably start there. So yes, our websites are awful and we know that and we're trying to fix that. So I'd fix our websites. And then we've got a very ambitious strategy that we will execute when we can afford to execute it around social-driven marketing, social media-driven marketing and content-driven marketing. I'm absolutely of the belief that the same kinds of marketing approaches that work really well for consumer type products can work really well for business type products. You've just got to be able to target the right people. Yeah, so a serious social campaign and content driven campaign is what we want to execute when we can with the right kind of lead magnets and offers and all those things. Yeah, it's one of those things where as a startup, we've spent a lot of our time and money on product and not much of our time and money on marketing. And so hence we're the best kept secret that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, yeah. I remember years ago sitting in an airline lounge reading a magazine of a company that had created a piece of software that allowed you to clone PCs. And back in the day, that was something you wanted to do often in many business environments. And, it was far superior to the competitor's product. From an engineering, it did everything so much better, performed better. But the guy, who was talking about his company getting acquired, and he said, what did your competitor do differently? Because they never, got the market domination like the competitors. And they said the pure thing is our competitor spent more money on marketing, so they got more ears, more people engaged, sold more product. And he said, in hindsight, I should have spent more on building my audience and, evangelizing them than I did on, making sure my product was just the best out there. And it's always stuck with me. It was one little reading. It was over 20 years ago, but it stuck with me. And his company got bought by Symantec in the end. I think it was a New Zealand company, actually. I can't remember. But I just thought that was very interesting, right? You can have the best idea out there, but if the world doesn't know about it, they're not going to, beat a path to your door, so to speak.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, so we've built the product, and now the next step is to tell everyone about it. So, where we are on our journey has been, built the product. So yes, tick, right? Technically brilliant, tick all those boxes. Second is we're selling it in the local market and doing pretty well at that. So we're selling it in Australia. And we're at the point now where we're ready for more customers and we're ready for marketing, because we needed to test the product out in the market first, work out how to sell it, work out how to talk about it, how to explain it, and then move on from there. Right. So, and really even working out how to explain our product has been a challenge. This concept, we're managing to get it down to, we integrate everything from anywhere to find patterns in it that allow you to predict what's going to happen and drive outcomes has been, even that is a challenge in itself when you've got a product like ours. But now that we've got that, next step is to actually do our marketing properly, and that's why we're looking for investment.
I love it.
Yeah.
So time's flown. It's been great. I see we're on the 50-minute mark, and I always like to wrap up the show with a couple of quick fire questions, which are not about what we've talked about, but just random things about life in general. And, they're designed not to have too much thought, but really just, what jumps into your mind. So are you ready?
Fire away.
Okay. Would you rather save money or save time?
Save time.
I'd agree. What are the top 3 things on your bucket list?
Oh, on my bucket list? Oh, gee, I haven't even thought about this. I'm too busy doing this. On my bucket list. Okay, New York. Haven't been there. Been lots of places in the US, but not New York. Don't know why. I hear it smells. But anyway, probably New York, Paris. Haven't been there either. And what else would I want to do? Probably drive a race car.
Nice. That's cool. I like it. What's the last random thing that made you smile that you remember?
Oh, I accidentally tripped over. This is only one that will make sense to Australians probably. I accidentally tripped over because I was watching the videos from the firefight concert that was on in the weekend in Australia. And on YouTube, I accidentally tripped over a video of John Farnham singing with Coldplay.
Wow.
At the 2009, whenever it was. When was the last bushfire, the Black Saturday bushfires?
With Coldplay or Cold Chisel?
No, Coldplay.
Wow, okay.
Believe it or not.
Wow,
it was awesome. And yes, and it made me smile. Like, the crowd got into it like you would not believe, and it was great.
I like it.
So, yes, singing, and it was John Farnham singing You're the Voice with Coldplay. Go figure.
Excellent. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, let me give you a story while I think of the answer to this one. Right. So I gave myself some advice that changed everything for me when I was young. And I was thinking about this because I presented this group of students yesterday at a university. And there was a point when I was coding when I was much younger, when I was struck by a problem that was particularly hairy. If I look back on it now, I've given the things that we've done since, but, hey, it was at the time. And I went through this thought process of, geez, this is really hard. And then I thought, I'm clever. I can do stuff. I can work this out. And I worked it out. And then that kind of led me to a thought process of, actually, I'm not stupid. I can do these things. And I don't know, to me, that was a revelation at the time. And it's something that for a lot of years stayed with me. It's not necessarily I think of today, but for quite a few years it stayed with me. And it was the thing that led me to take big jumps and challenges in my career along the way. So when I went from being a programmer to an architect, and there's many programmers that I know have a lot of problems with that kind of jump, or from an architect to being a manager in an organization, or suddenly taking on 1,600 people to manage, or starting my own business, it's always been that, I might have started my own business later than I would have wanted to in hindsight, but I think this concept of, hey, I'm clever, I can do this. I think that self-belief is the big thing that opens doors for a lot of people. And there are so many people that are clever that don't have self-belief. So maybe I'll just say that, although not advice that someone gave me. I gave it to myself a long time ago.
It's so good. It's so good. And finally, what was your first job ever?
My first job ever? Believe it or not, my first job was a programming job. Like I said, right back at the start. Fortran 77 on a DEC VAX programming and straight out of year 12, believe it or not.
Amazing.
That was good. Then after that, I ended up doing a milk run between that and my next job. But
Classic.
But yeah, there you go. Yes, but I did a milk run when milk runs were a thing, running around the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning with milk bottles and jumping over people's hedges and running through people's front yards. It was great.
Yeah. Is anyone you'd recommend as a guest for the show in future?
So 2 people that I would recommend. So firstly, there is another great little Australian AI company that I don't know that a lot of people know about called Veraluma. They're based in Sydney. And Izzy, their CEO, is a great person and a great speaker. And their company is doing some really fascinating stuff as well. They have a human reasoning AI that they've patented that is super cool. And also, I think Ray Fleming from Microsoft Australia, who is just an all-out great guy to talk to and a great guy all round.
Yeah, I remember Ray from my time there. So excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Kevin, it's been great to have you on the show. If people want to connect with you, maybe something from this has sparked some interest, how can they get in touch with you?
So email address is kevin.francis@unearth.ai, and our website is unearth.ai, or you can look me up on LinkedIn.
Hey, thanks again for joining me today on the Power Platform Show. Full show notes for this episode, just go to nz365guy.com/182. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. 365 Guy, yeah, that's it. I don't know why I thought I said something else then. Anyhow, if you enjoyed the show, I'd love to get your feedback. Hit me up, LinkedIn, best way to get hold of me, LinkedIn Messenger. Send me a private message if you would love to hear a guest come on the show. You want me to, have a conversation with them on the show, let me know. It can be an ISV, it can be an SI, it could, be somebody, knee deep in the Power Platform, building Power Apps, using any of the great Power Platform tools out there. Anyhow, I'll let you go. Until next time, have a great week.